You think you know Roman military disasters, Teutoburg Forest, Cannae? But there's one that makes those look like minor setbacks. A desert plain in Mesopotamia where the richest man in Rome watched his legions get torn apart by an enemy he'd never seen before, where 43,000 Romans marched east and only 10,000 limped back, where horse archers and steel-clad cavalry turned the most feared army in the world into scattered corpses under a burning sun. This is Carrhae, 53 years before Christ. The day Marcus Licinius Crassus learned that gold can't buy you victory when you're fighting ghosts who rain death from horseback. If you value documented ancient history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Plutarch's Life of Crassus, written in the 1st century CE, and Cassius Dio's Roman history from the 2nd century CE. Cross-referenced with recent archaeological findings from the World History Encyclopedia, published in July 2025, and military analysis from Historia Scripta, published August 2024. Now back to the information. Marcus Licinius Crassus had everything. Born 115 years before Christ, he'd crushed Spartacus, accumulated wealth that made him richer than entire provinces, and secured his place in the first triumvirate alongside Pompey and Caesar. But he had one problem. His partners had military glory. Pompey conquered the east. Caesar conquered Gaul. Crassus had defeated slaves. In 55 BCE, Crassus received the governorship of Syria, not for administration, for war. The Senate hadn't authorized it. The people hadn't demanded it. But Crassus needed a victory to match his rivals. The target was obvious. Parthia, the empire that had risen from Persian ashes 2 centuries earlier, now controlling everything from the Euphrates to India. The Parthian Empire wasn't some barbarian kingdom. Founded in 247 BCE by Arsaces I, it had spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of mounted warfare. 2 types of cavalry ruled their armies. Horse archers, light, fast, deadly accurate, who could put arrows through Roman mail at 200 paces, and cataphracts, heavy cavalry encased in steel scales from helmet to hoof, wielding 4-meter pikes called contoi, 1,000 cataphracts, 9,000 horse archers. That's what waited for Crassus. Spring of 53 BCE. Crassus crossed the Euphrates at Zeugma with 7 legions, 43,000 men total, 35,000 legionaries, 4,000 cavalry, 4,000 light infantry. The largest Roman army ever sent east. It should have been unstoppable. Roman legions had conquered the Mediterranean. They'd broken Greek phalanxes, Germanic tribes, Gallic warriors, but they'd never faced anything like what was coming. King Orodes II of Parthia split his forces. He took the main army north to deal with Armenian rebels, but he sent his best general south to delay the Romans. Surena, 20-something years old, from one of the great Parthian noble houses, commander of 10,000 cavalry. The sources are clear on this number. Plutarch writes, 1,000 mail-clad horsemen and a still greater number of light-armed cavalry. Modern analysis confirms approximately 1,000 cataphracts and 9,000 horse archers. Crassus had a choice. King Artavasdes of Armenia offered 40,000 auxiliaries and safe passage through the mountains where Parthian cavalry couldn't operate effectively. The Armenian route made tactical sense. Mountainous terrain would neutralize enemy mobility. Supply lines would be secure. But Crassus refused. He wanted a direct march through Mesopotamia. Quick victory, maximum glory. The Romans followed the Euphrates south, then met Ariamnes, an Arab chieftain, supposedly Pompey's ally. He told Crassus the Parthians were fleeing, gathering loot, preparing to retreat. Chase them east into the desert, he said. Cut them off before they escape. Modern military historian Gregory Hospodor notes, Crassus followed a well-traveled caravan route with adequate water supplies, but Ariamnes was feeding him false intelligence. The chieftain was in Parthian pay. June 9th, 53 BCE. Morning. Near the town of Carrhae, modern Harran in Turkey. Roman scouts found dead, enemy cavalry approaching. The ground was perfect for the Parthians, flat, open, no obstacles. Nightmare terrain for infantry who needed close formation to survive. Crassus's second in command, recommended standard deployment. Infantry center, cavalry wings, narrow front to maximize hitting power. Crassus agreed, then changed his mind. Hollow square formation, 12 cohorts on each side, reserves inside with baggage. Defensive but immobile. The worst possible choice against mobile enemies. Noon. The psychological warfare began. Surena hid his main force behind the advance guard so his army looked small. Then came the sound. Plutarch describes a deep and terrifying roar from hollow drums covered in bells. like the bellowing of beasts mixed with sounds resembling thunder. The noise echoed across the desert, unnerving Roman troops already sweating in the heat. Surena had covered his cavalry's armor with robes and skins. As they approached the Romans, at a signal, they dropped the coverings simultaneously. Suddenly the desert blazed with reflected sunlight off thousands of steel scales. Margianian steel, the finest in the world. Helmets, breastplates, horse armor, all gleaming like mirrors under the Syrian sun. The Romans had never seen anything like it. Their enemies fought on foot or used light cavalry for scouting. These were mounted tanks. The Cataphracts alone weighed more than a Roman cavalryman and his horse combined. Their Contos pikes outreached Roman spears by 2 meters. Their armor could turn Roman javelins, but Surena was too smart to charge immediately. The Roman square looked solid. Instead, he sent his horse archers in circles around the Romans, staying beyond javelin range. 9,000 mounted bowmen began the deadliest carousel in military history. The arrows came from everywhere, not the simple shots of barbarian raiders, but precise volleys from composite bows that could punch through mail at distance. The Romans tried to charge, break out of the ring. Futile. The Parthians retreated, shooting backward. The famous Parthian shot then reformed and continued the bombardment. Roman soldiers locked shields in testudo formation, tortoise shell defense, nearly impervious to missiles. But now they couldn't move, couldn't maneuver, couldn't attack. Sitting ducks for what came next. Cataphract charge. 1,000 steel-clad horsemen hitting the immobilized Romans at 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. The Contos pikes, held two-handed, punched through Roman shields and armor like they were papyrus. Each impact shattered formation, opened gaps, created chaos. Then the Cataphracts wheeled away and the horse archers resumed shooting at the exposed legionaries. Crassus hoped the Parthians would run out of arrows. Fatal miscalculation. Surena had brought 1,000 camels loaded with arrows. Fresh supplies for every archer. The bombardment never stopped. Desperate to break the stalemate, Crassus ordered a breakout. His son Publius led 6,000 cavalry and infantry in a direct assault on the Cataphracts. The Parthians feigned retreat, drawing the Romans away from the main body. Classic nomad tactics. Once Publius was isolated, Surena sprang the trap. The younger Crassus found himself surrounded by the entire Parthian force. His Gallic cavalry fought heroically. Some sources mention they grabbed Parthian spears and tried to drag riders from horses, but numbers told 6,000 Romans became target practice for 9,000 archers. Publius took an arrow through the arm, couldn't hold his sword. Rather than surrender, he ordered a companion to kill him. The Parthians cut off Publius's head and mounted it on a spear. Then they rode back to show Marcus Crassus what remained of his son. The sight broke the old man. Plutarch writes that Crassus became nearly catatonic. The Parthian assault resumed with renewed fury. Horse archers surrounded the Roman square completely. Arrows fell like hail. Cataphracts charged whenever the Romans tried to loosen formation. By nightfall, the Roman army was finished as a fighting force. 4,000 wounded couldn't retreat. Crassus left them behind. The next morning, Parthians killed everyone. The retreat to Carrhae was chaos. 4 cohorts got lost in darkness, surrounded on a hill. 20 men survived out of approximately 2,000. The rest became pincushions for Parthian arrows. In Carrhae, Surena sent a messenger offering negotiations. Crassus, desperate and broken, agreed to meet. Fatal mistake. The parley turned violent. Some sources say Crassus was killed trying to escape. Others claim Parthian officers murdered him during the conference. Cassius Dio reports he was slain either by one of his own men to prevent his capture alive, or by the enemy because he was badly wounded. The most famous story about Crassus's death is probably myth, but reveals Roman attitudes about the disaster. Legend claims the Parthians poured molten gold down his throat as mockery of his legendary greed. His severed head was sent to King Orodes, who was watching a performance of Euripides' Bacchae. The head of Crassus became the prop for the head of Pentheus, torn apart by his own mother in the play. Numbers tell the story. Of 43,000 Romans who crossed the Euphrates, 20,000 died, 10,000 became prisoners. Only 10,000 made it back to Syria under Gaius Cassius Longinus, the same Cassius who would later assassinate Julius Caesar. The 10,000 prisoners vanished into the Parthian Empire. Ancient sources suggest they were relocated to Alexandria Margiana, modern Merv in Turkmenistan, on the empire's northeastern frontier. Homer Dubs, writing in the 1940s, hypothesized these Roman soldiers eventually reached China and founded the village of Lycian. DNA evidence remains inconclusive, but the theory persists. For Rome, Carrhae was catastrophic beyond the immediate losses. The disaster destabilized the first triumvirate. With Crassus dead, Caesar and Pompey had no moderating influence. Civil war became inevitable. The Roman Republic had 4 years to live. The battle revealed fatal flaws in Roman military doctrine. Legions excelled against infantry, but had no answer to mobile archery combined with heavy cavalry. Carrhae forced tactical evolution. Later, Roman armies included more cavalry, better archers, different formations, but the lesson cost 43,000 lives. For Parthia, victory at Carrhae established military reputation that lasted centuries. It proved Eastern cavalry could destroy Western infantry under the right conditions. The techniques Surena used, mobile archery, feigned retreats, coordinated charges, became standard steppe tactics copied by everyone from Huns to Mongols. Archaeological evidence supports the ancient accounts. Relief carvings at Tangi Sarvac show Parthian Cataphracts, exactly as Plutarch described. Graffiti at Dura Europos depicts the scale armor and Kantos pikes. Finds of Roman military equipment in Parthian territory confirm the prisoner accounts. Modern analysis reveals how completely the Parthians outmatched their enemies. Roman legionaries carried 40 kilograms of equipment, moved at walking speed, needed formation to fight effectively. Parthian horse archers were mobile missile platforms capable of continuous fire while retreating. Cataphracts combined the shock power of heavy cavalry with missile support from the archers. The Romans faced a combined arms force 2 centuries ahead of its time. Temperature records from the region show summer heat regularly exceeds 40 degrees Celsius. Roman soldiers in full armor, carrying shields and javelins, would have been exhausted within hours. The Parthians fought from horseback in lighter equipment, conserving energy for the crucial moments. The desert itself was a weapon. No shade, no relief from sun or arrows. Roman tactics depended on short, decisive engagements. At Carrhae, they faced a day-long battle of attrition against enemies who could resupply indefinitely from camel trains while staying beyond effective retaliation range. Surena's victory made him too dangerous to live. King Orodes, jealous of his general's success and fearful of rebellion, ordered Surena's execution shortly after Carrhae. The man who destroyed Crassus never saw another campaign. Typical of autocratic regimes, eliminate successful subordinates before they become threats. The Parthian Empire survived another 3 centuries, partly because Carrhae proved Roman legions could be beaten. Later, Emperors Trajan, Marcus Aurelius, Septimius Severus all learned to respect Parthian military capability. The easy conquest Crassus envisioned never materialized. Recent excavations near Vienna uncovered a Roman mass grave from the 2nd century CE containing 150 battle casualties buried hastily without cremation. The discovery, published in Archaeological News magazine in April 2025, shows how Romano-barbarian conflicts continued producing massive casualty rates long after Carrhae, but none match the psychological impact of Crassus's disaster. Military historians consider Carrhae a textbook example of tactical flexibility defeating numerical superiority. Surena had 10,000 cavalry against 43,000 Romans, but chose terrain and timing perfectly. He used mobility to negate Roman advantages while maximizing his own strengths. The entire engagement lasted 1 day, but that day changed military history. Surena's tactical brilliance extended beyond the battle itself. He understood Roman psychology. Legionaries were trained to close with the enemy, fight hand-to-hand, win through discipline and courage. Parthian tactics denied them everything they knew. No enemy to charge. No formation to break. Just endless arrows from shadows that danced away whenever Romans advanced. The weapons technology gap was decisive. Roman composite bows were inferior to Parthian designs. Roman cavalry used spears and swords, close combat weapons. Parthian horse archers could engage at 300 meters with deadly accuracy. Their arrows, found at archaeological sites across the former Parthian Empire, show sophisticated metallurgy. Iron heads designed to penetrate mail, bone reinforcements for flight stability. Mass production techniques that could equip thousands of archers. Modern ballistics testing of replica Parthian arrows shows they could penetrate Roman lorica segmentata at 200 meters. Roman shields, designed to stop Mediterranean javelins and swords, offered limited protection against high-velocity projectiles coming from multiple angles simultaneously. The Cataphract equipment was equally advanced. Scale armor from Dura Europos shows sophisticated construction. Individual steel or bronze scales sewn onto leather backing in overlapping patterns, full body protection while maintaining flexibility. Horse armor used similar techniques, protecting the mount's head, neck, and flanks without restricting movement. Kantos pikes represented the pinnacle of ancient lance design. 4 meters of ashwood tipped with steel, two-handed weapons requiring exceptional horsemanship. Archaeological finds show the pike heads were socketed rather than tanged, preventing breakage at the joint. Some cataphracts carried backup weapons maces, axes, long swords. but the Cantos was their primary tool of destruction. The battle's influence extended far beyond the immediate participants. News of Roman defeat encouraged rebellions across the eastern provinces, Jewish communities in Syria, Greeks in Antioch, Armenian nobles who had been forced into Roman alliance, all saw Carrhae as proof that Rome was vulnerable. Parthian confidence soared, leading to invasions of Syria and Armenia that continued intermittently for decades. In 36 BCE, Mark Antony led 180,000 Romans against Parthia, seeking to avenge Crassus. He suffered similar humiliation at the Battle of Urumia, losing 40,000 men to Parthian cavalry. The psychological victory was as important as the tactical one. Crassus's head wasn't the only Roman trophy. Parthian nobles claimed the golden eagle standards of entire legions. These symbols of Roman power, silver eagles mounted on poles, carried by standard bearers in the front ranks, represented the soul of each legion. Losing them meant military and spiritual death for Roman soldiers. The eagles remained in Parthian hands until 20 BCE, when Augustus negotiated their return as part of a face-saving diplomatic settlement. No military expedition could recover them, only diplomacy and tribute. The recovery of Carrhae's eagles became a major propaganda victory for the first emperor, celebrated on coins and monuments across the empire. Archaeological work at Harran, ancient Carrhae, continues revealing details about the battle's aftermath. Coin hoards buried around 53 BCE suggest local populations fled the area. Roman denarii mixed with Greek tetradrachms and local bronze issues, hastily buried and never recovered. Pottery fragments show disrupted trade networks. Even civilian settlements felt the impact of military disaster. The Balik River, where Crassus deployed his army, still flows past Harran. Modern satellite imagery shows the terrain exactly as ancient sources described. Flat, open, perfect for cavalry operations. Standing on the battlefield today, you can see for kilometers in every direction. No cover, no escape routes, no tactical advantages for infantry caught in the open. Seasonal variations matter. June in Mesopotamia brings temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius. Roman soldiers in mail armor, carrying oval shields, javelins, and short swords, would have been suffering heat exhaustion within hours. Water discipline becomes critical. The Balik provided some relief, but once Romans moved away from the river, dehydration became another enemy. Parthian cavalry had advantages beyond weapons and tactics. Their horses were superior. Nisaean breeds from Media, tall and strong, capable of carrying armored riders at speed. Roman horses were smaller, bred for different purposes. The weight difference alone. Parthian cataphracts and their mounts weighed nearly twice what Roman cavalry did, created psychological impact before combat began. Horse archery required lifetime training. Parthian nobles learned to ride before they could walk, shoot arrows before they could read. These weren't seasonal soldiers or conscripted farmers. They were professional warriors from families that had practiced mounted warfare for centuries. Their skills were hereditary, passed from father to son in traditions dating back to the steppes of Central Asia. The supply chain logistics reveal Surena's preparation. 1,000 camels carrying arrows represents extraordinary planning. Each camel could carry approximately 150 kilograms. Multiply that by 1,000 camels, 150,000 kilograms of supplies. Not just arrows, water, food for men and horses, replacement equipment, medical supplies. This was a professional military operation, not a raiding party. Camel trains also provided tactical flexibility. Unlike wheeled baggage trains that required roads and limited mobility, camels could follow cavalry anywhere. Surena could maintain his supply base close to the battlefield while staying mobile. Roman baggage trains, with ox carts and mules, became anchors that restricted movement and created vulnerable targets. But here's what sources didn't reveal until modern archaeological work began. The battlefield itself shows evidence of systematic looting. Metal detector surveys around Harran have recovered Roman military equipment scattered across several square kilometers, belt fittings, armor fragments, weapon components, all showing battle damage consistent with ancient accounts. Bone fragments, when they're found, tell stories. Trauma patterns on skulls match arrow wounds. Limb bones show cuts from edged weapons. The forensic evidence supports Plutarch's description of a running battle that lasted hours, with hand-to-hand combat mixed with missile exchanges. Temperature data from ice core samples in Greenland confirm 53 BCE was unusually hot across the Mediterranean region. Climate stress would have affected both armies, but Romans in heavy armor suffered more than Parthians in lighter equipment. Dehydration, heat stroke, and exhaustion became force multipliers for Parthian tactics. The 10,000 Roman prisoners who survived Carrhae faced a journey that would make the battle look merciful. Ancient sources mention they were marched to Alexandria Margiana, modern Merv in Turkmenistan. That's over 1,500 kilometers from the battlefield, on foot, through desert and mountains with minimal supplies. Archaeological evidence suggests some prisoners were settled in military colonies on Parthia's northeastern frontier. Chinese sources from the Han dynasty mention tall, pale soldiers fighting alongside Parthian forces against nomadic invasions. These could be descendants of Crassus's legionaries, still serving as heavy infantry 2 generations after Carrhae. DNA analysis remains controversial. Some studies of modern populations in western China show European genetic markers that could indicate Roman ancestry. Other researchers dispute the methodology, but physical evidence keeps accumulating. Roman-style fish scale armor has been found in Chinese archaeological sites dating to the 1st century BCE. Coincidence becomes harder to explain. The Lycian village theory, proposed by Homer Dubs in the 1940s, suggests some Roman prisoners eventually reached China and founded a settlement. Modern researchers found residents with European features, unusual DNA markers, and cultural practices that might trace back to Roman origins. The evidence remains circumstantial but compelling. What's certain is that 10,000 Romans vanished from their own history. No records of ransom negotiations, no prisoner exchanges, no repatriation treaties. They disappeared into the Parthian Empire like stones dropped in deep water. Some probably died on the march east. Others succumbed to disease, climate, despair, but some survived, adapted, intermarried with local populations. Their children spoke Parthian or Sogdian instead of Latin. Their grandchildren worshipped Persian gods instead of Roman ones. The legions of Crassus became genetic ghosts haunting the Silk Road. That's the real tragedy of Carrhae. Not just 20,000 dead on a Syrian battlefield, but 10,000 lives erased from history, men who became ghosts in their own empire's memory. Rome forgot them. Parthia absorbed them. They vanished into the steppes like their eagle standards, lost until archaeologists started digging in the 20th century. The desert wind still blows across the Harran Plain, carrying dust that might hold fragments of Roman bone mixed with Parthian arrows. Both armies dissolved into the same earth, where 43,000 men learned that empires die one battle at a time.